The Matrix Deciphered. This is a book written by Robert Duncan, the Saint. It is nonfiction and original research. Also see his vital new book project Soul Catcher Vol 2 at Amazon. Monday, November 8, 2010. The Matrix Deciphered. Bio of author. True nobility is exempt from fear. King Henry VI, Part 2, Act 4, Scene I. Call me the Saint. I am the All-American, prep school, Harvard College graduating with honors in computer science and a minor in pre-medical studies, and advanced degrees from Harvard and Dartmouth in business and science. My famous ancestors are President Lincoln, King Duncan of Scotland, and Governor William Bradford, the first governor of Massachusetts. My research interests have been neural networks, virtual reality, and EEG-controlled robotics. Before graduate school I worked for the Department of Defense, Navy, NATO, and various intelligence agencies' computer science projects. I have done business consulting and computer consulting for the largest companies in the world. I have been a professor, inventor, artist, and writer. I am one of the last Renaissance men. My projects have included algorithms for echelon and CIA natural language parsing and classification of document content, IRS formula for red flagging audits, writing the artificial intelligence code to automate tracking of the Soviet nuclear submarine fleet and all-water vessels, work integrating HARP with SIGINT SIGCOM and SPA-WAR. I have worked on projects for the Justice Department connecting local, state, and federal databases for the tracking of terrorists. I developed a system for the FBI to track license plates past toll booths and other locations. I worked on the Soldier 2000 program to create body networks for reading vital signs and other information. A system I worked on called Sniper is operational in Iraq which triangulates on intercity conflict gunshots. I have been to a couple secret bases in the so-called free world. I have developed telemedicine, robotic surgery and virtual reality applications for the Army. For DARPA, I have worked on satellite computer vision target tracking applications and tank simulation as well as integration of the land, sea, and air surveillance systems like SOSUS, towed arrays, and others. Projects that I have worked on outside of government contracts include my thesis on computer-generated holography, a project making paralyzed people walk again using choreographed stimulated muscles movements, face recognition, voice identification and recognition, fingerprint recognition, and neural network robotic controller. My research interests move to enhanced reality heads-up displays and wearable computing systems. My current research involves finding a cure for the mind-control directed energy weapons fiasco. The integrated global surveillance grid is actually part of the holy grail of weapons and human control systems. My apologies to the human race for my contribution to tyranny. I was tricked into thinking it would not be misused by corrupt government, especially in my beloved country. I was wrong. The Joint Non-Lethal Weapons Directorate has skipped green on the governing board. One of my old colleagues at a technology think tank in Cambridge, partly in charge of the radio frequency weapons testing for neurological disruption, now torturing and killing people worldwide. Several other the United States Navy and UK Navy scientists have been knocked off, and that is why I have come forward. I know my time may be near. I am currently a professor in computer science and business, helping to educate the public on government corruption, greed, and stupidity. Like my ancestor Lincoln, I am fighting against mental slavery in a new civil war engineered by the same useless elements in over 80 government agencies who have tested radiological, drug, and viral weapons on unsuspecting Americans for over 45 years. I have great pride in the fundamental and constitutional values of America and mean no disrespect by my blasting the incompetence, apathy, and stupidity of those involved in the conspiracy of involuntary biological, chemical, and psychotronic human effects testing. There are so many brave men and women serving in the armed forces who fight and protect us for the American values they believe in. But because of the silos of information called compartmentalization in the security agencies and the lack of accountability and oversight of black operations and some top-secret projects, diabolical elements become rogue or worse, destroying the very country they are tasked with protecting, turning it into a hypocrisy rather than a democracy. My goal is to awaken Americans to the continued horrific acts of military and CIA weapons testers in this country and the other branches of government's inability to stop them and hold them accountable. All I ask from the reader is to listen to testimony and validate facts presented here and come to their own conclusion. Then fight to win back America from this silent overthrow. This has been my project for about 2 years, investigating government corruption, incompetence, and cover-up, upon which I accidentally stumbled one day while looking at a reverse MRI scheme to inject electromagnetic signals into the brain for virtual reality applications. I have interviewed over 200 people and worked on the highest level of military projects for the United States, NATO, and UK, and have given videotape testimony to senators and representatives on this topic, resulting in lip service since they have no real power to enforce. 2 high-level FBI agents and a couple CIA agents have come forward to validate the existence of a Ultra-like project that continues to grab random people for mind control experimentation. 2 of these have since become part of the program and endure daily psychotronic tortures. All the torture can be done using directed energy psychotronic weapons with the so-called Continental Ballistic Missile Surveillance Defense Grids. I apologize to the human race for any contribution to these 4th-generation weapons that I may have worked on that are more horrific than the nuclear bomb and whose cover-up is more pervasive than the Manhattan Project. And because of the horrific acts of violence being committed on as many as 2,000 Americans as far as my research has uncovered, and many others in other countries, I understand the extreme risk to my own welfare that publishing this material will have. But freedom is so important to me that I know full-heartedly that the human race must have an open discussion on these weapons to decide their own fate before the point of decision is gone, that I am willing to risk divulging so-called national secrets. All I offer you is the truth. All information presented in this book was received through legitimate channels such as the Freedom of Information Act, military documents, victim testimony, and turned agents. I still hold valid the oath I took to keep secret the details of the projects that I worked on under DOD budgets. The majority of the proceeds of this book will go towards helping the psychotronic experiment survivors and surviving families of those that have perished. When the government fails, business and the citizens must look out for each other. Remember, all I offer you is the truth. Morpheus, The Matrix. Preface. My motivation for writing this book was to help consolidate the technical information about the most advanced, secret military weapons being tested on civilians throughout the world, and to give new test victims a literary reference that they can give to police officers, psychiatrists, and family members so that they can be quickly educated on what is happening them. When the person is menticized with drugs and electromagnetics, it is extremely difficult for that person to articulate the complex politics and devious cover-up being used on them without sounding crazy. After reading this book, the only excuse people of the community have for continuing to disbelieve the victim is their own ignorance and inability to cope with the shame of being American. I will sound extreme in my writings. It is the intention of the government experiments to be as violent and harsh as possible to victims to make them sound crazy when they describe the events. I thought about toning it down to be more believable, but it wouldn't have been the truth. This needs to be part of the historical records for future generations to learn the failings of our own. We should have been more vigilant. The tactics used by the CIA/DOD, Department of Defense, for massive human experimentation has not changed in 35 years. Acting like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde allows them cover and plausible denial while they cower back into the fringe and shadows of government. If they made the experiments mild, people would be more likely to believe the DOD/CIA conducted this kind of torture research. Congress is impotent to stop it, although they have tried many times in the last couple decades. So as a fact of life, we must cope with the reality of the loss of control of our government and fight to spread the truth through word of mouth and other yet to be controlled information channels. Ignorance is the only enemy, and everyone working to keep secrets or spread disinformation are merely the unimportant pawns to be sacrificed in this classic metaphorical battle between good and evil. I titled this book The Matrix Deciphered because I was inspired by the movie series The Matrix, which was a clear and very accurate metaphor for what is occurring to people. Morpheus says in the movie, "Nobody can tell you what the Matrix is, you have to see it for yourself." You do not want to see the Matrix for yourself. I will do my best in the following pages, to unravel the metaphor and boldly explain exactly what the Matrix is. You will quickly realize how the complexity of the games of power, control, and disinformation strategies have evolved in the last half-century. A certain level of skillfulness and much time is needed for the average person to parse through the vast amounts of material necessary to consolidate it all to a few understandable truths. The only way we can win this informational civil war is by educating a certain percentage of the population who will understand the technology and believe the thousands of witnesses. Only then will government finally stop torturing and killing citizens with these directed energy weapons and apologize for their indiscretions. Then a new dawn for mankind will come of age that promises to unify the peoples of the world, eliminate pain, and possibly allow us to cheat death. It is the last war that will ever be fought. But the stakes are very high. It is our souls, our freedom of thought and expression, our uniqueness and individuality that will be lost forever if we fail. Introduction. The American Delusion: A Dream and a Nightmare. We are raised on lies and practiced self-delusion. We ask, do these pants make me look fat? And we dread the response, no, it's the fat that makes you look fat. The pants make you look colored. We teach others to lie to us. We believe what makes us feel good and rationalize away those facts that don't. We are in the land of deception. The average person tells 2.5 lies a day. As a social experiment, try counting the number of exaggerations and flat-out lies you encounter in a day by people, advertising, and watching the news. Assuming you are worldly and wise enough to disentangle the word games, you will be shocked. For some, the dream state is pleasant. Sheltered from the misery of the world, given a continuous false stream of hope, and led to believe that they are part of something good, righteous, and moral, many live in an ignorant, myopically focused bliss. For others who adventure too far with truth and knowledge, they will find the roads not traveled to be scary with factual realizations. A mind once stretched, cannot regain its original shape. Be forewarned, you cannot be put back into the matrix, that is the American delusion. I used to pose this philosophical question to peers. If there was a virtual reality machine that seemed real in every way and you could determine what your perfect life would be in advance, would you agree to live in it for the remainder of your physical existence, assuming your memory could be erased that you chose to do it? Your answer is quite revealing about the base motives that drive your everyday living. If you answer, no, it isn't real, my life would be meaningless, then you are the type of person who is driven through creating meaning in your life and define your value through your relationships with other people. If you answer, yes, of course, who wouldn't want a perfect life? Then you are a pleasure seeker and define the reason for existence is to optimize your quantitative happiness through your chronological lifespan. The question is not just a philosophical one anymore. But like in the movie, Vanilla Sky, things could go wrong. I always answered the question as such, I would absolutely do it if I could be assured that the illusion had a 100% chance of success. Since nothing is 100% certain, I choose not to because the letdown would be too great if the program didn't take. There is no such thing as the perfect illusion, especially for the critical eye and mind. The American delusion is just such a virtual reality machine, designed of carefully constructed, psychologically sanctioned thoughts with a wireless high-tech twist. You will probably choose to close a blind eye and hope for the best as much of the world has. But you will always ask yourself the same old questions, isn't there something more? What is the meaning? The question is, of course, ill-posed. The question should be, what is meaning? To answer this question, you must let down your guard, eliminate your ego, and let go of all that owns you for a moment. The journey to the truth of our existence is an emotionally rocky one. You will find yourself elated at times, and depressed at other times. When you understand, there will be no emotions at all, just acceptance of it. For this expedition, we will set sail aboard the ship of science. It is a framework of logic and method that has served mankind well since its inception. As your captain on this expedition, I will navigate and guide us while traversing the numerous languages of studies and meld their different vantage points into a single model of reality. The vast sea of human knowledge is separated by barriers of jargon. Once removed, sailing the ocean of understanding is far smoother and direct. All aboard. Prepare for rough seas. First we head to the land of lies. The psychology of deception we will find. Expect to encounter a known beast that has only one large eye. Fight valiantly and blind the Cyclops. You must always keep your guard up. Wield your weapons of critical reasoning, skepticism, and logic gallantly and you will defeat the monsters in our journey. Expect the unexpected. We will encounter Medusa in our crossing into the synapse. Be forewarned, this journey is a treacherous one. Hypnotic spells that will turn you to stone chanted by witches unseen, and the sirens of forbidden knowledge will lure us close to our death. But fear not, Apollo the son of Zeus, the god of truth and of light, smiles upon our journey for he too is in confrontation with Mars and Ares, the gods of war. The truth is not always what you expect to find. During our journey to the land of deception, we must dig deep and follow Alice's white rabbit down the rabbit hole. Time and space will no longer be flat, and proportions and logic will seem to conflict. The Mad Hatter is not to be trusted for directions. He is confused on purpose to mislead us in the maze of lies. And if that isn't enough of an adventure for you, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion too cross our paths many times. They were not blessed with a brain, heart, or courage by the wizard behind the current of secrecy. In these failings of creatures, we can triangulate on what we want to be. There is no turning back, we are in search of the promised land. Metaphors and analogy are not to be taken literally. They are direction signs in the crossroads to understanding. Beware of false signs, the little gremlins from the Kremlin and Pentagon, put them up to mislead you. You will in time recognize their signature and be able to distinguish the true path from strategic misdirection. Follow the radar light, political power and defense industry greed, and you will find the trolls that are operatives of the American delusion. We need to cross the Valley of Death, in the beautiful country of California, to see the secret weapons development that is there. If I were ruler, I would take California and its people away from the hindrances to cultural progress, and set up a separate land with a new breed of enlightened and civilized people. But nay, it can't happen because of an ever gluttonous growing federal giant leech that covets his power and likes to consume his cattle grazing there. Why must we face these beasts of deception? For they are part of the journey of understanding the hobgoblins of little minds who created the matrix of deception. History and background. E.g. cyber hive minds. In order for us to proceed in our understanding of a revolutionizing technology and its capabilities as a weapon, we need to define some concepts and vocabulary. EEG stands for electroencephalogram. It is a representation of the brain's electrical activity. Traditionally, electroencephalograms are gathered through probes placed all around the head. They measure minute electrical differences from each other that are representative of the brain's activity near the probe. A brain map can be inferred from these voltage sensors. EKGs, electrocardiograms, work in exactly the same way to measure the electrical waves from the heart. MEG stands for magnetoencephalogram and similarly measure the magnetic fields created from ion flows in the brain. They have different trade-offs in terms of measuring and locating brain activity. A functional MRI is an active scanning technique used to also measure brain activity in real time as well as its structure. MRI stands for magnetic resonance imaging. It uses magnetic resonance to create photons that are representative of the types of atoms and bonding states they are in. Another sister technology is called ESR, electron spin resonance. I have not seen any hospitals which make use of this technique by creating images from electron spin resonance. Electromagnetic waves are created by a perturbation to electric or magnetic fields that carry information about the states of angular momentum. There are many more brain imaging technologies, but these are the traditional ones. Using probes to collect brain information has limitations beyond just the lack of mobility from the tethered wires attached to the user. It collects electrical information the best at the surface of the brain but not deep into it. That is why so many probes need to be attached to the head in order to get a more refined picture of activity. I have been studying the human mind for a good portion of my life, from neuroscience, to cognitive modeling, to artificial intelligence. Here is secret number 1 that has been suppressed by the forces of ignorance in the government. There was a patent that I will keep referring to throughout this book because of the importance of the work. It is published in the appendix. In 1974, Robert Malek, an employee of Dorn and Margolin Incorporated, a major defense subcontractor in radar design now owned by Edo Corporation, an even larger all-defense contractor in electronic warfare, invented a fairly simple radar device that could read whole brain electrical activity at a large distance. It has the major advantages of no wires and full brain electrical activity analysis, not just points on the skull surface. He discovered and perfected a way to use some simple electromagnetic oscillations anywhere from 100 MHz to 40 GHz to read brainwaves by illuminating the brain and its electrical conductance, then reading the return signal. The imaging method observes the changes of frequency resonances, amplitude, and phase which represent the states of neuron depolarization throughout the brain. Secret number 2. But more profoundly, he discovered that he could influence brain waves if precisely timed with a return training signal. He had no idea that at this moment in history, he had accidentally destroyed democracy as we envision it to be. The military and surveillance community immediately picked up on the patent and within 2 years had reprogrammed their communications and surveillance satellites and terrestrial phased arrays with the new concepts. The rapid deployment of this technology occurred because it only required software changes in already existing radar, imaging, and communications terrestrial dishes and satellites. Many additional spy satellites have been launched since to bolster the system. So in 1976, on the bicentennial of this great nation, a system called TAMI was born. TAMI is an acronym for Thought Amplifier and Mind Interface. A more invasive Big Brother technology came about before George Orwell's prediction of 1984. Secret number 3. Stealth radar techniques were first recorded by observing the Russian bombardment of the United States Embassy in Moscow with microwaves. Using high-powered steered phased arrays and focused directed energy from two sources next to each other, one can create a nearly undetectable scalar wave, or destructive interference at the point of interest. With just a minor energy interaction, the interfering beams bounce back with strong signal-to-noise ratio to be resolved at the sources again. This allows for any imaging technique to be done from extremely large distances. In effect, it makes distance irrelevant to the detection feature, be it radar, MRI, or ESR imaging. At the same time, the Russians had discovered and were developing similar capabilities. This accelerated the secret arms race that continues to this day. The research and capabilities have come a long way in the last 30 years. Even if one didn't have direct access to the knowledge of surveillance capabilities, one could project out in time 30 years knowing technology developments increase at an exponential rate. At that time the military demonstrated the capability of reading automobile license plates from satellite images. In order to cover up and not draw attention to mind-reading radar, the whole field of psychic phenomena and paranormal psychology was invented to deceive the civilian populations of what was occurring. The Russians showed their hand when they started bombarding the United States Embassy in Moscow with microwaves in the late 60s, and then with the 7 Russian woodpecker transmitters that began operation in 1976 pointed at the United States. Unfortunately, due to the nature of this new weapon, many human minds are needed to create the database of specific brain data necessary to increase the effectiveness on a larger and larger population. These are referred to as the cataloging and cloning operations. In this context, cloning does not refer to human cloning, but EEG cloning. Many have misunderstood this fact and then it was popularized by the TV series X-Files. These cloning operations are what plague the human race today, as every country feels the need to have this weapon that requires torturing and killing many people of their own populations to develop. EEG cloning means to copy someone else's brainwaves onto another person. The discovery made by Robert Malak allows this to be done wirelessly anywhere in the world. A new military division emerged called the Psychic Warfare Unit, initially stationed in the Pentagon, but most likely it was rolled into the Psychological Operations, Electronic Warfare, and Informational Warfare units. Initially this became a great intelligence gathering tool. Psychically spying into other people's minds was an incredible feat. I don't use the term EEG cloning much because it refers only to the special case of observing a target's mind. That is only one aspect of the technology. Malak discovered he could influence brain waves just as easily as reading them. So at the other extreme, a psychic warrior can EEG clone his brainwaves onto a target. This is symbolized in the movie The MATRiX, where the agents take over random citizens' bodies while in pursuit of the heroes. The correct terminology to describe everything in between the two extremes is EEG heterodyning. Heterodyning is an engineering term which means to mix signals. So EEG cloning is just a special case of EEG heterodyning. EEG cyber hive mind is another term used for EEG heterodyning for non-weapons use experiments. These are collectives of people who share one common set of brain waves. They jokingly refer to the process of forcing someone into a collective as Borging them, a reference to the evil cyborg civilization from Star Trek. They are studying both the long-term effects of being in this kind of collective mind configuration and how to use it to control, spy through, disable, or kill a target. They also are studying communication and organization without spy gadgets of any kind for synchronized missions. The emerging field which intersects at the physics of psychology is called psychophysics. The dynamics of the mind are well described from neuroscience reductionism. Artificial neural networks have been around for over half a century. But the new challenge is to map exactly the subjective experiences of consciousness to the physics of organic intelligence's informational signal processing, including biochemical and electromagnetic. The word psychophysics has additional connotations that are quite appropriate in the way that this field has evolved in the secret labs around the world. The tools of psychophysicists are called psychotronics. It is this area of research that has given rise to all the conspiracy theories on the New World Order, psychoterrorists, secret societies' involvement, mind control, and satanic cults. Mind control weapons are the holy grail of the ultimate weapon and has given birth to the world's most notorious, sociopathic scientists, which in turn have spawned a generation of the most intense human suffering for weapons testing efficacy the people of this planet have ever endured. The first documented use of mind-reading radar. In order to reduce the effects from the bombardment of the United States Embassy in Moscow with microwaves, they put up microwave screens on the windows of the building. Oddly enough, this actually had the opposite effect of increasing the microwave intensity inside. The only way this can happen is if interferometry was being used on the embassy. If you block a path of the interfering/heterodyning wave fronts, you can lessen the destructive interference pattern, thereby increasing the measurable energy. This was the first documented use of so-called scalar weapons. Lured by the sirens of truth. True nobility is exempt from fear. King Henry VI, Part 2, Act 4, Scene I. My story. Some people will feel that it is an appropriate irony that the worldwide surveillance and obviously integrated psychotronic directed energy systems should be used on me, since I ignorantly participated in building cogs for the subsystems of the machine, like the Jews who dug their own graves in the Nazi Holocaust. But I assure you that I am not alone. Indeed, most scientists and engineers working on DOD projects have no idea how the pieces ultimately fit together and how the system as a whole will be misused. Welcome to hell. Two people on different days walked by me and said, "You are going to have a psychotic break. You are a psychopath." The first time it happened, I assumed the person was talking on a cell phone and I didn't see the headset. I was happy, relaxed, and doing what I love to do: invent, socialize, write, and learn. Life was good. On October 31, 2004, Halloween, the spooks came out. I felt a little strange after waking up from a nap and feeling groggy, which didn't go away for the entire day. The synthetic telepathy began. As clear as a cell phone call, I was talking aloud and one main speaker with 3 other people on the other end of the conversation would reply. Rather than being frightened, I thought someone like my neighbors were pranking me using a technology called ultrasonic heterodyning, not very well known in the United States except as a weapon made by American Technology Corporation, but used in vending machines in Japan. They had a program like Candid Camera, that used this technology to make people think they were crazy and used it for other gags. It projects sound so that only one person can hear it at large distances. It was very fascinating for me to get a demonstration of the technology, I thought. It was Halloween and they introduced themselves as a satanic ritual abuse cult. I wasn't really very familiar with cults, but I assumed that could be scary. When I didn't seem to react to that cover story, they went on to try several others. "We are the Borg and we are assimilating your uniqueness," a man proclaimed in a confident voice. "Whatever," was my rebellious, disinterested reply, even though I was actually quite interested in the technology demonstration. "I am God." Pause. "Would you believe I am the angel of death?" The conversation continued. "No." "Okay. We are evil aliens and this is an alien abduction," they less assuredly claimed. I thought to myself without speaking, wow, they really should have rehearsed this prank before trying it on me. How about this? We are brain nappers? You are food for thought. The conversation became more belligerent and repetitive. The only relief I got was putting mineral oil in my ears and plugging them with wax. However, it continued for 9 full days, and that's when the torture began. Imagine every pain you have ever felt and many you haven't being repeatedly played into your mind like MP3 files for 12 seemingly unending months. All the time, the narrators describe in detail what kind of pain you are feeling and psychologically abusing and tormenting you the best they can. After being run through the battery of torture tests, I can confirm that what one of the researchers involved with mind control brags about in his paper is true. I can control every aspect of human mental function at 450 MHz. These tortures and experiments easily stole 35 years of my life or more. Colonels involved with the EEG heterodyning weapon claim they have demonstrated its lethality many times. I have since identified many people they have killed in this way. I developed quite a rapport with the mind control weapons testers. Our conversations became more half-hearted and honest. Agents asked, "Can you get close to the president? Would you kill him for us? We just have to get you to say that aloud to people to make them think you are insane and dangerous. We usually can get people locked up in an insane wing at a hospital by the first month or commit a crime through their bodies. We need you to discredit yourself. Do you have any ideas?" My reply: "I don't think you need to do anything. The technology is too unbelievable for most to comprehend, and your brutality on so many citizens will be enough for the majority of people to be skeptical and tune out. Agents, can't you just tell people that the Russians, Chinese or the FBI is behind it? I reply, what else do you have to choose from? Agents, those are the only scripts we've been trained on. We are big powerful psychic warriors and you should fear us and do what we say. If you kill your father we will let you go. You've got to commit some crime to discredit your testimony. We need blackmail, something. Nobody is as perfect as you. Who are you, fucking Jesus? I prophetically declare, no, I'm not even religious, but if I can perform 3 miracles, expose your long history of crimes against humanity, find defenses against the weapon, and help usher in a new scientific era, I would be a saint. An eye is upon you. Freemason symbolism. The Total Integrated Global Surveillance Network. How do the ionospheric heaters such as those based in Alaska, Puerto Rico, Colorado, and Brazil image the Earth in astronomically small detail? From now on I will call the ionospheric heaters, ground-based imaging and directed energy systems. Once again the devil of destruction, Dodd, has purposefully misnamed these systems to mislead the public and Congress as to their real uses and intentions. By using the concave mirror effect of the reflection off the Earth's upper atmosphere, these giant phased arrays can see the smallest energy anywhere within their purview and direct the energy back the same way. These directed energy phased array systems are often many miles wide. Imagine what one would see if the sky were a giant mirror. It would amplify points on Earth like a cosmetic mirror does for your face. Now add another lens, like a telescope, and you can see even more microscopic elements. And like what had to be done to fix the Hubble telescope with a misshapen lens, the imperfections of the atmosphere can be compensated for to get a clearer picture. Directing energy to a spot on Earth would be like focusing a magnifying glass on an ant to burn it with the sun's energy. The people look like ants to these dishonorable insignificant men playing God at a distance. Insert picture of mirror in the sky. To instinctively get a sense of what one would see if they had an eyeball as big as the HARP array and could see electromagnetic waves in the HF through UHF range, let's look up at the ionospheric mirror. We can see almost 3/4 of the way around the world in any direction, and because of our huge eye and the magnifying effect of the mirror, we can see microscopic properties only limited in spatial resolution by the highest frequency that we can see, but only limited in the energy resolution by the sensitivity and noise filtering algorithms. If there was a person at the point of observation looking back through a telescope, assuming that visible light reflected off the ionosphere, he would see a giant eye looking back at him. So this ionospheric mirror is very important to the death machine. Finding ways to shake, distort, heat, ripple or disrupt it so they can't continue operating the virtual hell they have built, would be a good goal for the humans. Show ray tracing image of sky as mirroring Earth. The ionosphere starts at 50 kilometers and extends to 650 kilometers above the Earth. There are several layers and each layer has plasma or ionized air that reflect and refract the signals from a vertically pointed radar known as an ionosonde, also a major part of the so-called ionospheric heaters. The angle of refraction and total internal reflection depends on the wavelength of the electromagnetic wave and its angle of incidence to the layers of the ionosphere. Show map of range of known directed energy field arrays and power levels based on total internal reflection and overlap of other directed energy fields at different common radar wavelengths. Resolving power of the ground to ionosphere to ground telescopes, aka directed energy and Earth imaging systems. Put formula for resolving power based on size of phased array field lens and wavelength, then add the magnification factor from the concavity of the Earth's atmosphere. Electron spin resonance, ESR. This is the secret sauce that the conspiracy kills to keep secret. Notice that there are no ESR machines in hospitals. Why? Because it would become immediately obvious how easy it is to read body electricity from radar, that is brain waves at a distance. The basic concept is simple and very analogous to the way magnetic resonance imaging works. It works on manipulating spin and gyro frequency of electrons. Picture of out-of-sync electron frequencies and synchronized gyro frequency. If only 5% of the country were smartest enough to understand this basic physics, we wouldn't be so easily manipulated by the disinformation agents that say brain waves can't be read by radar imaging fields or that neurotransmitter release can't be modulated by timed electromagnetic fields. If the people of this country want to be free again, they need only to understand these simple physical truths, and that shall set them free from the alien psychological and psychotronic enslavement. It isn't an accident that the United States is at the bottom of the first world countries in terms of math and science education. Electron spin polarity resonance, EPR. In this imaging technique, the spin polarity is measured by flipping it, which adds or subtracts energy from the system. Energy must be conserved, so a photon is given off if it goes to a lower energy spin state. It is heated during the movement to a higher energy state, prepping it for a synchronized transition back to a lower energy state. The body's electricity is modulated into delayed state transitions because of the local electric field variations. This return signal is processed and the very high signal-to-noise EEG patterns are extracted. The sensitivity is truly science fiction-like. Even a single nerve or neuron firing can be picked up individually. This gives new meaning to signal intelligence. Magnetic resonance imaging, MRI. Very similar to the way magnetic imaging works with the spin of the nuclei of atoms with their magnetic moments. Picture of MRI: synchronized nuclei rotations need E and B fields. Traditional radar bounce imaging. Scalar or interferometric stealth radar. So in order that academics and commercial industries don't accidentally discover how much surveillance the militia does on them, and so that the energy from radar does less damage to human tissues and the environment, the clever and unintuitive concept of doubling the power to the area under surveillance was born as stealth radar. If two or more beams such as pulses from the Alaskan and Puerto Rican imagers converge on an area in the continental United States, the beams would either double in intensity, constructive interference, or cancel completely, destructive interference, depending if the waves were 0 degrees or 180 degrees out of phase from one another. The beams or wave fronts bounce off the area under surveillance undetectable by an observer at the point of interest. The wave fronts don't just stop, they continue from their reflected and scattered trajectories to be collected by any type of sensor once the wave fronts have moved out of each other's canceling beams, which exists as a scalar field or slangily termed gravity waves. In addition, the scatter stealth radar would make it appear like free energy was coming from nowhere due to the microscopic differences in scattering angles. This is the so-called psychic energy that seems to emanate from people. This is what powers Colonel Thomas Bearden's so-called free energy machines. The free energy machines are just harnessing the power of the destructive fringe of the powerful stealth scatter radars. Colonel Bearden claimed a 75-watt free energy device. I heard that there was 30 watts of scatter field energy from a human body. That's pretty close. What he is actually building is a scalar or gravity wave detector. Interesting how he funded this research through a company that claims other mechanisms of action. Is this considered black budget funding? I wonder what his investors think. Diagram of scatter energy and beam cancelling fields. Millimeter wave, infrared and visible wavelength satellite imaging. This topic is self-explanatory. Everyone has seen the incredible detailed infrared imaging capabilities of the military. They can see heat signatures through walls. What do haunted houses, ghosts, alien abductions, and the Bermuda Triangle have in common? Remember how the air becomes electrified before a haunting by the appearance of a poltergeist in movies inspired by this weapons testing on the public? We've busted our ghost in the machine. Remember how planes would be downed in the Bermuda Triangle because their compass needles and instruments would go haywire? Those were directed energy attacks from the Puerto Rico radar field built in 1959. Remember all the shows about cars stalling and radio stations flipping right before an alien abduction scenario? These are all the same radar tricks but with varying degrees of lethality. These tricks are all done by the same technology and the usual criminals in the bowls of the beast. Who gave the chimps the gun? Who are the chimps' handlers? They are the high traders and should be hung according to the law of the land for training the chimps to attack their own country and provoke wars around the world. The cost in terms of human misery for maintaining such a large killing machine is far too great. Just so insecure, frightened Americans can delude themselves into safety. See the section on the probability of being killed by the United States machine versus foreign governments, terrorists, sharks, or lightning. The war machine that is supposed to make people safe is statistically their biggest threat. Ignorance may be bliss, but what you don't know can hurt you. Van Eck hacking. Hacking the human brain. Computer hackers are always finding ways to zombify as many machines as they can. This means that they find a way to hack into your system and install remote control software of some sort. The military's programs, called Zombie IV, were similar in goal. They wanted to be able to hack into people's minds and create remote-controlled zombies. They succeeded over 30 years ago and the technology is now close to perfected. There is a stalking phenomenon occurring in America and around the world. Read Terrorist Stalking in America for another perspective. There are 3 kinds of stalkers, one of which have been released by the Freedom of Information Act documents that describe government stalking programs, or goon squads as they are called in slang. CIA and other agencies training their employees for intimidation tactics abroad and in the United States are one form of the members of terrorist stalking gangs. The CIA has used these tactics to help overthrow governments and intimidate leaders of other countries many times in history. The second purpose is to play into society's programming that people who think government agents are following them are crazy. Discrediting an individual through mudslinging, blackmail, or erratic behavior has been a high priority documented skill for these agencies. The other two types of stalkers are more dopes and victims of zombification. The global system, TAMI, can hone in on a compatible mind and instantly be able to manipulate it to some varying degree dependent upon many factors. The offense practices their trade by influencing people near a targeted individual to convey information only pertinent to them, for spy games. These people are everyday citizens unfamiliar with this high technology. The effects are so subtle without lots of training to detect, nobody would be the wiser. They would at most just question why they did that or felt the need to say that. The third category of stalkers is the most disturbing. True zombies are created through the voice of God microwave hearing effects. Some people become complete believers that God is talking to them and telling them what to do, be it follow someone or kill on command. John Lennon's killer claimed voices kept saying do it over and over again. TAMI came online in 1976, and John Lennon was killed in 1980. The culture around those people in the United States that are stalked, tortured, intimidated, or harassed by federal agencies can be funny at times. The stalkers that are practicing their childish cloak and dagger games, targeted individuals call zombieloids, a new United States agent slur derived from the secret zombie programs, and mongoloid, since the term spook has been overused. Monitoring of life signs and psychic Star Wars defenses. So almost every human is monitored and tracked by various integrated technologies. One justification for TAMI is that a global system to monitor everyone is necessary to alert the military in case of a psychic war and protect the leaders from electromagnetic influence. But of course in reality it is used for the exact opposite purpose. Uniqueness of heartbeat and breathing patterns, list patents. Other Star Wars directed energy weapons plans. I have seen plans for electromagnetic railguns for launching projectiles in space at other satellites. They use superconducting high-powered magnets to accelerate projectiles faster than bullets. Imaging the brain and other Earth objects. From my protected sources I have seen brain images derived from the TAMI system. I was not told how they were produced, but I can reverse engineer some possibilities given what I know about surveillance capabilities. Using cognitive modeling techniques, one could construct a PET or functional MRI-like image showing brain activity simply using the phase, amplitude, and frequency information from mind-reading radar. A spectral image could be constructed based on models of brain function and an electron spin resonance topographical head map. Since the brain activity is precisely known, it could be rendered and displayed in a 3D image. Other methods might include using submillimeter or terahertz wavelength radar or Earth gauze MRI/ESR techniques. Incredible that this can all be done with a constellation of spy satellites or ground-based phased arrays. In medicine, one technique is called computed tomography or CAT scan, which use X-rays to obtain image data from different angles around the body and then uses computer processing of the information to show a cross-section of body tissues and organs. X-rays are not used for obvious health reasons by the equivalent radar imaging, but any or all wavelengths under the visible spectrum can be used to obtain a very good image of a person. The infamous HARP phased array that stretches across Alaska is capable of Earth-penetrating tomography. Pictures of my soul's container. I have a friend who is a radiologist. He stuck me in an MRI machine to produce a screensaver while he was doing rounds before we went out drinking. I think I got a clean bill of health because after reviewing the MRI slices he comments, "I am astonished at how unremarkable your brain is." My response, "Don't judge a mind by its container. Please take time to review the appendix." There is a document on imaging meteors the size of baseballs with the Puerto Rico phased array radar grid using scatter radar and ion spectra absorption, called the head echo effect. You'll understand the relevance. The United States Embassy in Moscow. So here is what the United States learned from the Russian bombardment of the United States Embassy with microwaves in Moscow after many years. By heterodyning two powerful beams of microwaves where one beam mostly cancels out the effect of the other at the location of interest, you will have a near-scalar radar beam almost undetectable because of the low-intensity readings. The low-intensity microwaves still interact with the environment and bounce back to their origination. The original beams were very high intensity. So what this does is creates a method of amplifying the signal-to-noise ratio. It allows high-powered signals to bounce off surfaces with a minimal reaction to objects. At the receivers, it can then be amplified with a clean signal. This is the secret to mind-reading radar. A typical directed energy haunting. The arrows represent the exact points in the audio frequency domain where a target always hears the beginning of a phoneme of a syllable of a word. This is a pitch, EAC, analysis of the white noise of a scanner during a severe voice-to-skull attack on a victim. Disclaimer: it is illegal to modify scanners to view military frequencies. All scanners are disabled in certain frequency ranges for national security reasons. So we used body resonance frequencies just above the military bands when collecting our data. Okay. God forbid that people have a right to defend themselves to see what energy frequencies are being used to attack and kill them. Although difficult to see in this shrunken image, the target can hear the same speech each and every time the sound is played. At the arrows, the government torture victim hears the syllables of the words. Everyone else hears pure noise. The word syllables and cadence that the target hears can be viewed in the broadband energy spectrum, however to the naked ear it can't be heard. Some energy changes are picked up by the simple power spectrum audio analysis. Here is the same white noise at a different scale in the power spectrum with edge detection applied. The rectangular areas are where the victim hears syllables of words again. Highlights include what look like 10 bands and formant voice patterns. This is the amplitude phase encoding of the noise, another method mentioned by both the Stocklin patent and Malik patent. It appears amplitude and pulse frequency modulated. Listen to the noise. You can't hear these features. If this is the deterministic broadband noise encoding plus the electromagnetic head resonance technology of the CIA for word choice, it is indeed cleverly hidden and specific to individuals. Observe the lower frequency broadband energy jumps that can't be heard if you have an equalizer on your MP3 player. While the audio analysis is inconclusive without high-end military-grade digital oscilloscopes and the expertise to reverse engineer the CIA word choice technology, other basic tests were more than obvious. During the attacks, the entire scanner spectrum up to 850 MHz became this white noise and no other signals could be picked up. The target's body electricity when measured by several voltmeters went from 10 MV to over 0.3 V. Compass needles deflected by 20 degrees from magnetic north and the video camera microchip sensor, CCD charge-coupled device, became ionized and all the video became overly bright and color distorted. I did not have wireless EEG equipment at the time of these tests, but the neurological effects on a targeted individual again were beyond doubt. The directed energy hauntings are pretty common now, and I quit following the United States military random attacks on people until I acquire the appropriate equipment to do the more sophisticated signal processing. Methods of encrypted signaling. The single gigahertz pulse through wall radar can be extended as a very covert method of messaging to a specific location. Using geographically dispersed transceivers, a signal stream can be encrypted, broken up and then divvied out to the broadcasting stations, via satellites or ground-based. The message is secured by both being encrypted and fragmented on their way to each station. The stations each broadcast with precise timing so that the pulses arrive in the correct order at only one triangulated point. Interception of the stream anywhere else will render the encrypted stream garbled and the bits out of order. I'll leave it as an exercise for the cryptologist at the top universities to devise an algorithm for deciphering one of these interceptions. You can imagine that precise psychotronic signal injection in conjunction with ultra-wideband, frequency hopping or deterministic broadband noise could be done in a similar manner to create a low probability of interception and detection method. Poetry of shame. Porter Goss, you disappoint us all. You have the power to stop this with just one call. You shame Hotchkiss and the public with your lies. Torture is a common practice covered up with bizarre suicides. You were entrusted with power, but failed many of us in the last hour. Biocommunication and world control. Once again, I must question why the so-called Eastern Bloc countries are more forthcoming with their research than the United States and even NATO-aligned countries. The United States government has hindered civilian research in this area tremendously through their active disinformation noise campaigns. Imagine how much material gets first filtered by the communist countries, then the CIA, and finally we have to overcome the barriers of language to get this. Why is there more information coming in from outside the so-called free world than internally? The answer is obvious for those who have seen the matrix of deception from both sides of the country's split personality. So this is a theory that is incredibly disturbing that crossed my path since becoming fairly well known as a researcher in this area. Often I get anonymously sent information from other saints which I examine with a skeptical mind due to the countless disinformation agents out there. But this deserves to be told. A machine for every man, woman, and child. Now that sounds like the thinking of a machine to me. Morpheus, the MATRiX series. For this book I oversimplify some of the concepts so that it can reach more people. I preface this complex idea with the notice that it is still being simplified for general consumption. Bioelectric field modulation could well be the mode of one type of interaction of these directed energy weapons. This is what is studied most amongst the New Age group and the psychics of yesteryear, as well as what comes out of the Eastern Bloc. We know that informational coherent neuron modulation will connect with any brain. Both magnetic and electric fields in the most basic form interact with neuron communication, but the reason we don't go into convulsions from all the electromagnetic signals that our bodies absorb is that they are not significant in terms of the repetitive time series cognitive pathways, i.e. brain entrainments. There is a precise opportunity for amplification and thereby modulate and piggyback brain signals with another external signal. Your informational pattern and cognitive model is nothing like any signal you would absorb from radio stations or electrical appliances. One must exactly get the train of pulses correct in order to influence the outcome significantly and amplify the effects. Growing virtual neurons. This is one method to usurp a mind and create a higher order mind network. Let's look at Medusa's head again in the dendrites of the neuron. Assuming one could wirelessly measure some property that was representative of the state of that neuron, one could grow virtual neurons connected to it. Since many methods of neurotransmitter modulation are researched along with raw electric or magnetic current induction methods, influencing the voltage at the hillock of a neuron can be done. With just those two sets of tools, one can grow virtual neurons to every human brain. Cyberneticists working on the concept of a global brain have no clue that it has already been done to some extent and completely wirelessly. They all focus on neural chips and plug-in brain links. Furthering this idea to its logical end, one could create a higher order mind from connecting all human minds together, a global brain. Has it been done? I know for certain that many people have been mapped and connected to the United States Mind Network. Whether that is just for current and future use as spy and control conduits, or whether this large collection of minds has been or is being integrated is unknown to me. Certainly hive minds with 2 to 6 people are being created and tested in the thousands of cells. Whether those cells are somehow connected to each other through a collective hive mind switchboard is also unknown. The virtual neurons can be of a self-organizing type, example another human brain or computed neurons. Or they could be non-adapting virtual neurons used to force new thought processes and program thought pathways, neural programming. The possibilities are mind-blowing. You can see how even men of strong character would eventually become corrupted by this power. Once the target brain unbeknownst to them has adapted and incorporated the virtual network, i.e. the modulated brain signals, anything can be done with their soul. Like in the movie The Matrix, if you pull the plug on their brain link before they escape to an exit, they would lose their mind, figuratively and literally. Similarly, the new self-organized configuration is reliant on the virtual neurons. If the signal suddenly stopped, the organic brain would take some time to readapt to its new configuration. Minds, magnetically integrated neuron duplicator, function might be to literally duplicate a target brain through a copycat parallel artificial neural network. Over time the artificial network should accurately cognitively model the target's cognition. Because the model is artificial and computed, it can be run in fast forward and thereby predict probable next states with a set of confidence levels, speech and reactions for example, before the target's brain has achieved those states. Victims of the psychotronic research call this one form of demonstrated thought reading. Uneducated or conspiratorial psychologists call this thought sonorization. Thoughts being finished and spoken back to the target before they barely begin or are fully aware of their own thought. Let's imagine if everyone has their own artificial mind model running all the time. A program composed of synaptic weighted matrices constantly growing with the person, basically a soul duplicate of pure information. Occasionally, a person's mind will separate in its program evolution from the actual human mind's evolution due to any number of events, profound new experiences, psychoactive drugs, brain accident. Perhaps this is what triggers an alert for the monitor of minds to send in the psychic assassins to kill or disable the person who is no longer on the mind network and might be considered a threat unchecked and unmonitored. If the artificial cognitive model becomes way out of sync with the actual person, the person needs to be incapacitated so that the knowledge of the matrix of deception isn't spread and doesn't pull others out of the American delusion. I'm just having fun speculating here. My aliens began the synthetic telepathy conversation with the statement, "You hurt your mind. You lost your mind." Those low-life aliens love their head games. Another way to estimate how many people might be on the mind network is to look at the rate of tinnitus in the population. How many people hear a very high-pitched square-wave tinny sound once in a while? I scoured the medical research in this area and none of it satisfactorily explains the neurological and biophysical processes that give rise to this kind of tinnitus as described by government torture projects and the general populace. Tinnitus affects 17% of the general population. 17% of the United States population is 50 million people. The United States Mind Control Network is rumored as of 1985 to be able to handle 25 million people. In fact, when the cases of tinnitus that have real physical causes are removed from those stats, it matches exactly. With a potential influence over 25 million people, all public opinions and elections could easily be manipulated. In fact, until we regain constitutional controls over this integrated weapons system, no public servant, politician, or military leader should be allowed to serve if they suffer from any sporadic or constant tinnitus as described. This is why a civil war will occur and not a revolution. Potentially 8% of the population cannot be woken up from their slumber and will continue to power the military machine. A neurally linked person on the mind network becomes reliant on the extra energy that amplifies their neural circuits. The person's brain chemistry adapts to this extra energy through biological processes. It is similar to how a person becomes tolerated to psychoactive drugs or poisons. So other than tinnitus and the side effects of an overexcited brain for a couple years, if a person was brain napped later in life and didn't grow up with a brain amplification signal, one would never notice their soul, their informational essence, was being held in a vast array of supercomputers in an underground military facility. This religious metaphor runs throughout many military programs. From the nuclear submarine named Trident, the weapon of the god Neptune, to the NASA rocket Apollo, to the acronym for the space-based weapons, GODS, Global Orbiting Destruction Systems. So if you believe in the soul, you have a duty to free your soul twin being held captive by these supercomputers and potentially tortured in a simulation for eternity or until the power is shut off. Selective memory erasure and thought filters. In the movie Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, a reference to Aldous Huxley's work, people could remove selective memories of old lovers if they were too painful. The CIA program EDM, Electronic Dissolution of Memories, has this capability. If your mind is duplicated with an external signal, for argument's sake let's say, half of the signal is due to your brain's electrochemical processes and the other half is the mind cognitive model simulation of your brain that should be nearly perfectly in sync all the time. By forcing memory recalls of the memories to be erased, EDM can track the neural circuits, mathematically represented by matrices in the cognitive model, and turn them off. This could be done by an active filtering recognition system of the brain patterns. If the person begins to recall a filtered memory or have a non-government sanctioned thought, then the filter dampens that mental process in the mind model. Since half of the signal that your brain adapted to is dependent on the external mind model running in sync, your brain pathways won't have the energy necessary to further induct neural groups to reach full consciousness. Another way to put it is that thoughts acts like they have a momentum and inertia. Take away some of the momentum and the thought can't get over the next hill. Sisyphus was condemned to repeatedly push a rock uphill for eternity because he revealed the designs of the gods to mortals. This is nice metaphor as to how thoughts are dampened and can't reach awareness. People on the mind network are condemned to not becoming fully aware without the energy and momentum necessary to repeatedly push the thought over the top of the potential energy hill. For example, how the United States shadow government has killed more people by keeping this technology secret than all the previous United States wars since the beginning of this nation. Let's look at how EDM can be used for smoking cessation. Let's forget about hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming, and aversion therapy techniques for this thought experiment. Rather than using amplified self-destructive behaviors for silent assassinations, smoking urges can be dampened or filtered just like a memory or thought pattern in the mind model. The Russians have successfully applied similar techniques. Bullet time research into enhanced human performance. You move like the agents. Trinity to Neo, the Matrix. What happens once your cognitive model is in silicon form? Your simulation can be run at any speed. Subjective consciousness occurs due to the state changes in your brain. Computational equivalence implies it matters not that your function is run on silicon or a giant billiards game, as long as the output always has the same information content and functional equivalence. Psychophysics states that it must give rise to the same subjective consciousness. It is your soul twin. However, your silicon soul twin can be run at any speed. In fast forward, at the speed of light rather than at 200 miles per hour axon depolarization velocity, the world around you will practically stand still. If you are bored, turn it down and time will literally fly by. See the section on silicon immortality. The CIA ultra research into improving memory is still being investigated. See Appendix for CIA and Inspector General documents. Add virtual neurons and amplifying brainwaves along with creating a dominant alpha brainwave state improves learning and memory. Recall is quicker too. One interesting property being explored is the hive mind collective intelligence configurations. Certain aspects of the combined heterodyne mind are faster and others are slower. Word choice can be greatly enhanced for speaking and writing as well as degraded. The search and solution space for problem solving and decision making is broader and sometimes converges on a solution faster when the shared mind works well together. More interesting and practical for the military is the increase of physical reaction speed. Not only can machines respond to precognitive thoughts for fractions of a second quicker reaction times, but those predicted precognitive amplified thoughts can be amplified back into the same person and amplify those cognitive pathways faster than they usually would, thereby decreasing the time for the lightly grouped neural patterns to become full awareness and then converted to action. This would improve someone's hand-to-hand combat skills significantly. Stupid alien tricks, voodoo dolls. If this story isn't bizarre enough for you, it gets even funnier. Earlier I facetiously joked that the psychic warfare unit in the Pentagon during the 1970s was probably located next to the voodoo doll warfare unit. It actually is in the same unit whose war room is nicknamed Hell. All involuntary human psychotronic weapons research projects report hot needles in flesh in various parts of their bodies as a type of practiced torture. These aliens turn themselves into voodoo dolls. They poke themselves with a dull needle, but the amplified feeling for the clone target is perceived much more painfully. Of course they could have designed a computer program with a human body model, voodoo doll, and select a point to poke, burn, tickle, punch, cool, etc. You can see how funny these scenes will be in the movie. More Hollywood movies inspired by the psychic warfare unit. Men in Black is about a secret government agency that watches aliens on the planet. They had a scene with monitors that showed 24-hour surveillance of all the aliens who looked human. The psychic war room monitors countless people's EEG patterns and translates it into audible and visual digital information that can be viewed on a monitor. The agents in the movie read the tabloids to get the real news. There is an interesting parallel to the truth once again. Tabloids will report on alien abductions. You now know how to translate and read between the lines. Alien abductions are the directed energy nervous system modulation experiments that the mainstream media is forbidden to touch. EDM, electronic dissolution of memory. I have been pointing out how many horror movies have been inspired by these electronic mind control experiments that have been taking place in ever-increasing numbers in the United States and abroad. The movie, The Forgotten, is a clear example of one particular CIA/DOD program that was not discontinued after Congress's church investigations. EDM is an experiment on erasure of memory. In the movie The Forgotten, several children were abducted and their parents were forced to forget about them. Of course, the age-old mythology of evil aliens as an explanation who is conducting these 30-plus-year-old technology experiments was the focus of the movie. People's ignorance and desire to believe the fantasy of aliens or demons still works today to redirect the anger that the public should have against the high treason that has become acceptable for weapons testing on the public at large. The Nazi scientists that were brought over after World War II infected our country's military and security agencies, thinking that testing on all humans and not just Jews is acceptable as long as there is plausible denial. It is now commonplace. Electronic dissolution of memory is achieved by several mechanisms. First, let's examine the EEG heterodyning option. When two minds are linked through TAMI, every thought is shared. The psychic attacker merely needs to blank their mind when a topic of thought occurs that they want to avoid. The blanking of their mind forces the memory recall of the target's mind to be blocked also. Thought redirection also works. Memories are just inductions of brain entrainments. If the subject is not trained in psychic defenses, their thoughts will blank also. This is only a temporary mechanism and does not affect long-term memory. A more severe method is used to erase long-term memory. What is nicknamed the deep fryer uses an overstimulation of memory creation to degrade those recalls. Neural network theory predicts that large training sets of data or experiences will exponentially decay earlier memories stored in the neural networks. So electronic neuron amplification technology was discovered to have this capability by accident. But of course, everything get weaponized and marketed into a project for budgeting. The third method of EDM uses hypnosis and signal coherence changes to erase short-term memory. Along with severe trauma and psychological abuse, these methods are used to try to get a victim to repress and forget their experiences from the experimentation of electronic mind mapping, influence and control for obvious reasons. As with testing and experiments, there is a probability that they won't work on certain minds and personality types. This is what they are interested in and documenting for weapons efficacy. Hypnosis and suggestion to forget with traditional vocal channels has been successfully demonstrated since Freud's day. Signal coherence is a relatively new concept. Your brain has natural operating frequencies. If altered, the information is stored in your vast neural network under those new conditions. This is called state-dependent memory. It is observable as people who take psychoactive drugs or alcoholics. Memories stored under those mental conditions can only be recalled under the same conditions. Hypnosis has been demonstrated to recall memories under the same condition. Planted CIA paid psychologists popularized this phenomena as false memory recall. Many children have been subjected to these brutal ultra experiments back in the 70s, and when the memories began to resurface, many pseudoscientists of disinformation called them false recalls. Defense lawyers of child molesting priests also latched onto this concept for their defense. Memory probing. One of the more useful aspects of this technology is the ability to probe memories. The EEG heterodyning practice attackers play the same game with all victims. They are able through two techniques to walk the victims back in time to think that they have been linked to the victim since birth. Since the capabilities of remote neural stimulation are nearly identical to electrical probes in the brain, a random neural stimulation will trigger memories. This is not used for targeted memory recall, but rather for finding and recording memory anchors for further investigation. Those memories are used through synthetic telepathy conversations to make the target remember other connected events. Of course, direct vocal interrogation techniques can achieve the same results. Over time, this process is effective to get a complete profile of a person's life. Another tangential method used in connection with interrogations is an injected guilt signal. This forces memory recalls in conjunction with a specific memory anchor. So if you feel guilty about some particular memory, those additional memories will surface. And the last method used in these psychic games is more incredible. While the databases storing mental activity are impressive, they still don't have the ability to record every human's brain activity continuously for later parsing. They instead sample activity in time and save it. They only have clips of a particular mind, throughout their life, stored for later review. This cuts down on the 1.4 terabytes per second collective human geopsyche throughput that would be required. 1.4 terabytes x 31,536,000 seconds in a year equals 44,150 petabytes per year. The capabilities of computer storage will reach that soon enough for DOD budgets. So reviewing a particular target's brainwave clips allows them to appear like they have been with the subject of experiment for their entire life through demonstration of knowledge of earlier events. This brings up the topic of criminal law. Think about how we could perfectly convict crimes against other people. In the movie Minority Report, their society is able to prevent all premeditated violence. Only crimes of passion continue to be unstoppable. What a shame our government keeps this technology secret for pathetic military and spy uses. Secret Psychotronic Mind Prisons. Poem of Secret Psychotronic Mind Prisons. I am drowning in the sea of lies, plausible denial of bizarre suicides. The cowards that currently rule, kick me in the head like mule. What greater good is there than truth, triangulate on it with longitude and azimuth. Whilst I dread in my mental jail, I'll tell you my tale. It begins in the DOD archives. About a mind control tool. Discovered in my youth. While drinking a pint of ale. Secret psychotronic concentration camps. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Bible, John 8:32. It is also on the CIA plaque outside Langley. What is it like to be in a mind-controlled prison? Here is one form it takes through neuronal amplification technology. Your strange attractors of thought become like black holes with their pull, and before you can even realize, you are stuck in the ruts of some else's thoughts. Errors, fears, pain, and speculations are amplified to their extreme. It is dysfunctional and not the way evolution intended it. Truly the most dishonorable, pathetic, and grotesque weapon ever conceived by the minds of the monsters on the CIA payroll. Be ashamed, be very ashamed. Your tax dollars were used to deceive you. For others it is a journey into madness, but for the majority of people it is just a hypnotic, apathetic haze. This technology allows for personalized hells for people to suffer in their own private purgatory. What is the Achilles heel of worldwide mind control, torture, and silent assassinations? I believe we can shoot these fake gods in their antennas. Poisson space and knock out the communication systems that house the killing signals. Superconductors, I believe, are the shields we must develop against their irresponsibly and traitorously directed beams of death. And of course, if we can remove the spell that Hypnos has put the American people under, we can awaken the great sleeping giant to join our battle. Comic relief. To take another break from the serious and dark issues that we face, let's look at some amusing situations where the technology could be useful. Imagine you are Cyrano de Bergerac, a chivalric duelist with a comically long nose, and you wish to woo some young lassie but haven't the game or smooth words from which to court. You could heterodyne with a smooth talker and let them say the words she wishes to hear from your mouth. It is true, this can be done today. And in return for the favor, you allow the smooth talker to share in the prize, simply by extending his invitation to clone your experience of making passionate love to your new bride. Hypnotic entrainment pulses. What many victims report and I experience myself is a 3.2 Hz pulsing phaser-like sound. Visit www.thematrixdeciphered.